What's up, everybody? What's up, MGTOW? So this is going to be the last part of my MGTOW versus MGTOW series. So hopefully these questions kind of got some conversation going and got you thinking about some things, and I appreciate all the comments that have been left so far. So my next question is, if insanity is trying the same thing over and over and expecting different results, then we should ask if the men's rights movement failed due to its tactics, its strategy, or its goal. If, as most MGTOW claim, it was the tactic or strategy of the men's rights movement, then okay. However, since MGTOW hasn't shown any tangible results in the real world, and in fact the laws are getting worse and worse for men as the years go on, I think we should ask, is the goal of MGTOW of changing the laws or quote-unquote restoring the patriarchy the insane thing that is being repeated over and over again, and not so much the tactics or strategy? Now, if I were a 20-year-old guy today with MGTOW knowledge, I would most likely skip college completely, avoid women completely, buy myself a sex doll, and also save up for a surrogate. Now, you might be asking, why would you save up for a surrogate? Well, mainly because a bunch of guys online banging sex dolls and watching porn and complaining about 40-year-old women really isn't very intimidating to feminists, traditional conservatives, or the dicks wet don't care crowd. What really would start to intimidate them, I think at least personally, is if MGTOW men started having children with surrogates, and since the artificial womb and cloning is just a fantasy at this point, surrogacy is an actual, real-life, realistically available technology right now for men to have children, which I will get into a little bit more detail in a second. As for tradcons, I say this in the most respectful way, but y'all guys really fucked up on the patriarchy. No-fault divorce was introduced by a Republican senator or governor, Ronald Reagan, which you then supported so much that you went on to elect him for president. You really, really dropped the ball on the family court system, standing by while your fellow men had their lives destroyed through divorce, their children stripped from them, thinking, oh well, he must have deserved it. You let tons and tons of women become single mothers, cucking not only their husbands through alimony, child support, and taking their houses away and then fucking other guys in their houses, but you also let these single mothers cuck the entire society through the welfare system. American traditional conservatism has shown its hand to be very weak. There was no action taken against women from destroying the family. So I really, really don't want to hear anything about degeneracy if men start suggesting to young men that they might think about using gestational commercial surrogacy to become single fathers. Because honestly, if you can't handle a bunch of women, I don't see how you're going to be able to handle a bunch of angry young men. You might be bluffing about it, but in reality, if you can't even handle your own women, how are you going to handle a bunch of men who decide to go and do something else? As far as the MGTOW still holding on to some type of 1950s fantasy of having a live-in sex bot, perhaps you should analyze whether you actually want to have a family or you just want to have a live-in maid. Because the fact is, women have been raising children on their own for at least the last 60 years or so, and seeing as about 2/3 of single mothers work, you can't really claim that it's impossible for a single man to, have a child and also work. And if you are claiming that, then you're admitting that women are more capable of doing something than men, which personally I don't agree with that. According to statistics at least, a biological father is the least likely person to abuse a child, and I would also bet that a single father would generate much better results in raising a son than a single mother would. There's a lot of misinformation about surrogacy going on in the MGTOW community. As I said before, men claiming that it would be impossible for a single man, to raise a child on his own, which contradicts MGTOW philosophy that men can do things better than women. But also, there's the perception that somehow it's very easy for a surrogate mother to keep the baby and claim child support on the man, which, for the most part, is not true. It depends on the state. There's many states in which there's no binding contract for surrogacy, but specifically I looked up laws in California, and the laws in California seem to make surrogacy very easy. Well, not easy, but very concrete, and they have very concrete laws surrounding the process of gestational surrogacy. Many of the cases in which the surrogate mother did keep the baby were due to improper legal setups. Basically, they're either in a state where the contract law was not very good, or they didn't have a contract beforehand, or also they used traditional surrogacy, which I don't even know why they call it surrogacy, because it's also known as in vitro fertilization, where the man just uses the sperm to impregnate the woman through basically like a turkey baster. And a lot of the other cases in which the surrogate mother kept the baby from the expecting parents were cases that included actual abuse of the surrogate mother before the baby was born. Like, there's one article talking about how the person tried to choke out the surrogate mother and then she was able to keep the baby in that case. Then there was a bunch of cases in which the expecting parents found out that the baby had some type of birth defect, either Down syndrome, or there was a case where the baby had a cleft lip, and the parents demanded that there be an abortion, and the surrogate mother said that she would just carry the child to term and not allow for the abortion. And then there were some other cases where the expecting parents had a close relation with the surrogate, and they had interpersonal problems within the family already. So these cases seem to be the exception more than the rule, and it definitely doesn't seem like it's a 50-50 chance. Like, when you get married, you basically have a 50-50 chance of whether or not you're going to get slammed in a divorce. The surrogacy does not seem to carry that same high risk. Okay, so first of all, you have to look at the two main types of surrogacy. Like I said before, you have the traditional surrogacy, which is more commonly known as in vitro fertilization, and then you have what you would want to do is gestational surrogacy, in which the egg and the sperm are from somebody else, and then the surrogate is a third party where she has no genetic link to either the egg or the sperm. So this first bit of information I got from the R&S Law Group, and they're based in California. Just some of the things that they're saying on their website is that California allows for gestational and commercial gestational surrogacy regardless of the marital status of the person. And California law follows the Universal Parentage Act, which I'll get to in a second. In 1993, the California Supreme Court ruled in the case of Johnson versus Calvert to establish that where a valid surrogacy agreement exists, the intended parents should be recognized as the legal and natural parents. Gestational surrogacy also requires the intended parents to establish custody before the child is born, so there's no need for adoption contracts. And California law also requires that gestational surrogacy be legally enforceable, and the contract should be made before the procedure. So now the Uniform Parentage Act, which is available on the Uniform Law Commission's website, which I've covered the Uniform Law Commission before, which basically is a lobbying group that writes all of the laws for parental laws and stuff like that. They work directly with the United Nations and all of the states within the United States to try to create uniform laws for parental rights and things like that. And yes, they have written most of the laws for no-fault divorce, for alimony and child support and things like that. But this one law basically seems to be passed for LGBTQ people to be able to gain parental rights over surrogate children. So I think that it's something that men could also use, since specifically in California, they don't care about the marital status of the person. So the latest iteration of the Uniform Parentage Act was adopted on April 26th of 2018, and it is endorsed by the American Bar Association. Just a few facts from it is that it was put in place to stop discrimination against unmarried parents in court back in the 70s, and it's been updated a few times since then. The Uniform Parentage Act requires an intended parent of a child conceived by assisted reproduction and an individual who acknowledges parentage for a child to be legally responsible for that child, regardless of gender or genetic tie. And this Parentage Act also avoids constitutional infirmity of gender-specific paternity laws. Now, there's a few more clauses in there, but as you can see, it's basically designed so that homosexual parents don't run into any legal problems that would be surrounding, gender-specific marriage laws or gender-specific custody laws. And that, in combination with the fact that California doesn't care about the marital status, and also California allows people from any state in the United States to sign these type of contracts in California, it really doesn't seem like people make it out to be that, oh, this woman can just turn around at any second and decide that she's going to keep the baby and then you're going to be stuck paying child support, like a lot of people claim, which it seems to be not true. And then there's just some statistics about the rise of the use of commercial or gestational surrogacy in the United States. In 2010, there were 859 surrogates, which was a 28% rise from 2007. And then by 2011, there were 35,000 gestational surrogacy cases in the United States. And similarly in Britain, from 2008 to 2014, there was a 255% increase in the use of gestational surrogacy. So again, for people to claim that, surrogacy is some type of outlandish, far out there concept and you should just get a sex doll and forget about women and forget about having a family, I think is a bit disingenuous to say that, as that it's not an option, because it definitely is an option. And you're definitely going to get better results than trying to donate your sperm to a sperm bank or anything like that. So again, it's really just one of the problems with the current setup of MGTOW, in between, only channels that seem to talk about how women have hit the wall, or, we're going to restore the patriarchy, which really seems to be a fantasy at this point. Like, these are the only channels that people really listen to, and it does seem to be a little bit of a danger when you're telling a 20-year-old kid that, their only option is to just walk away from women and, stay on that tax farm, though. Stay on the tax farm, but, don't even think about having a family because, there's no way that a man could raise a child on his own, even though women have been doing it for the past 60 years. No, no, no. If you can't get a live-in maid that's gonna cook you dinner and make your salads and suck your dick, then you should just forget about it. Just forget about all of that. It sounds good, but, some people might actually be interested in having family or children, and seeing as how women really aren't going to be a part of families. They really are basically just out for themselves, and we see that with divorces and, all that type of stuff. But this definitely does seem to be an option for younger men to have something to look forward to besides a room full of sex dolls and a dog. And like I said, the fact is that, the current form of MGTOW is not intimidating anybody. Feminists don't care. Oh wow, a bunch of guys jerking off to porn and using sex dolls. They don't care. The tradcons think that it's a freaking joke. They're like, oh, well, yeah, they're all dead, I guess, And then the crowd of dick wet don't care. They're basically in the same boat. They just think it's a freaking joke. And the fact is that if you really think that these laws are going to change somehow, like I said in the beginning, you really have to analyze which part of it is insane. Is it trying to get the laws changed through the courts? Is it trying to go on strike? That's insane. Or is it just the fact of thinking that the laws are going to change at all? Is that the insane part? I don't know. It's just a question, but it's not really talked about much in MGTOW because that would definitely, put down sales and change people's whole branding if they couldn't sell this idea that, all we need is enough men to go MGTOW and then everything's going to change. So, just something to think about, like I said. So, besides that, have a good day and go MGTOW.